Good morning. Very good morning to all of you. Welcome. So as you can see, I'm here in the middle of a jungle. This is the jungle that the municipality of Cervia wanted to put on the stage in order to remind us of the importance of green spaces. We're in Cervia. Once again, Cervia shows to be the capital city of green areas. And we're here to talk about some very important aspects. Some aspects that are part of our lives, they were part of our lives before, and they will be even more part of our lives in the next future. We're going to talk about environmental emergency, climate emergency, and the health emergency now obviously is the main emergency, but we know that we also have to cope with the environmental emergency. We would have loved to be here all together, face to face, but we have to be here at a distance. But we deeply wanted to have this conference today. The municipality of Cervia wanted to organize this conference anyway. We will talk about some topics that are part of our daily job for some of us, but for some other people, it will be something interesting, something new to hear about. We will talk about green areas. We will talk about the importance of trees and the importance of urban forests for our lives in the future. Because, urbanization, that is to say, the migration from the country to the cities has now turned into reality. So this is what we have to talk about urban forests. During the day, we will have very high-level speakers, and they will tell us about what has happened to our climate and also what we have to do in order to try and mitigate climate change, what we have to do in order to promote the environment in a very, with a high degree of awareness. And you know that Cervia has always played a very important role from this point of view. So now we're going to move to Mr. Francesco Ferrini. I hope he also had some coffee or cappuccino during the break. So Mr. Ferrini, well, I think there's no need to introduce him. I'm going to read it. Actually, I'm going to read your presentation. You're Professor of General Arboriculture and Agroforestry at the University of Florence. I know he's a very humble person, but today, his article was published on Huffington Post on green areas in cities. So this is just to tell you that he's one of the main experts in the field of trees in the urban context, and also strategies for green spaces in urban contexts. So I'd like to invite him to stick to the time that has been given. So please, Professor, also stay with us until the end of this session. We will have, we're going to have some question time, but we will have to respect the timetable. So at 12:40, we will have Mr. Priolo, and then we will conclude this morning's session. Thank you. I'm sorry, I must apologize because I'm not wearing a tie. So I apologize. I do have a tie. I know you have a tie. You're much smarter than me. So, well, I'd like to share my screen. Please tell me if you can see the screen. Can you see it? Actually, I'd like to explain the title is the title of one of my books, but obviously I will talk about in general, I will talk about what is happening today, and also I will also talk about urban green areas. You may remember this picture from the end of, around March, or May, sorry. So it shows New Delhi before and after the lockdown. And it shows what happens when pollution is reduced. I showed this conference, this photo at a conference, And a person said, well, this photo is actually not before and after. Actually, it is before and during, because actually the after is exactly just like the before. So we all wonder, what have we learned from COVID? Well, COVID has taught us something, but not so much. Of course, we're going through an emergency, global emergency, health, social, economic emergency, and all of that. But actually, we are forgetting about some other things. COVID-19 is making us forget about climate change and also the loss of biodiversity and also soil consumption. And well, if we look at the future, we should learn some lessons. Now we do have the technologies. We have the recovery fund, for example, in Europe. So we do have the economic resources. And well, the most important thing is to understand how to allocate, how to use these economic resources in order to create some services for the entire society. So, well, we don't need to restart, or we need to change. It will have to be a change, taking into consideration this theory of the Swiss cheese. Obviously, the holes are the weaknesses of the system. So if we continue working just like we have done until now, so if we align the holes, obviously we will just continue having problems, adverse events. The pandemic, COVID-19, but pandemics in general, make us forget about the other risks, so emerging risks. This was published in October, and you can see that obviously pandemics and infectious diseases are first, but we have climate change at the second place, and pollution. Pollution has lost 3 positions. Let's look at the data, because the data is very important, of course. The impact of COVID, it had a cost, until now, it's had a cost of 3, 4 thousand billion dollars. But if you see at the cost of climate change, the pollution of air and water, extinction of species, and soil sealing, that has costed between 6 and 11 thousand billion dollars. So obviously, the governments all around the world are investing a lot of money in order to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. But Moody's has estimated that the economic damage due to climate change will be 7 times as high as a coronavirus pandemic. If in the next 10 years we invested $1,800 billion for meteorological alert systems, infrastructure, sustainable agriculture, the protection of mangroves, because we know that they protect the coasts in many countries, and water management, well, we would have a return of $7,000 billion, $1 trillion, sorry, so 4 times as much. And well, we know we don't have lots of money. We are in the middle of the emergency, and therefore we have to understand how to spend the money we have in order to maximize the benefits. This is why we need to have a change in paradigm. It doesn't have to be the green at the service of the cities, but the cities at the service of the green areas. You see these surgeons that are building a new city, and they're asking for trees, but it has to be the opposite. First, we have to start from the trees, and then we need to have the city inside the green. So what are the problems that they have caused, that they have led to the current situation? We have had a decrease in tree cover between 1970 and 2000. And we have kept the same tree cover between 2000 and 2020, but from now on, we need to increase the tree cover. As you can see on the left, you see that when you increase tree cover, you have a reduction from 44 degrees to 39 degrees centigrade if you increase tree cover. Obviously, what can we do? Well, the word needs less words, fewer words. Too many words have been used. We need more actions. We now shift into action. This is the call for action for Tuscany region for 5 million euros for 63 municipalities in order to plant trees in the cities, also Emilia-Romagna region, where we are located. Also, well, Emilia-Romagna region has a similar project. Let's put roots for the future. It's about planting one tree for each inhabitant. Things are moving, things are changing, but we need to understand how, where, what, why, and especially who. Who are the people involved? Who are the experts that will need to guide these new actions? Because, you know, the trees can save the earth. And I've written a book with this title, but there are a few questions we have to respond to. And you can see the questions here on my slide. First of all, we need to understand which ones are the best trees in order to mitigate urban heat islands. And well, there are some other experts that are talking about this. Being an agronomist, I must say that there are some trees that are more suitable than others for some environments with very high temperatures. Here you can see a list of a few of them. Some are autochthonous, some others are exotic plants, exotic trees. They are suitable to very sunny environments, and not all of them, but some of them are also very tolerant to dry climate. And here you can see in red, you can see the European autochthonous species. And this is a list of trees suitable to cities. Very hot cities and also where water is not always available. There's a project in collaboration with the University of Milan, and well, we're doing it in Krakow and also in Rimini. This is a live project, and both in Krakow and also in Rimini, the same species give the best performance, but also the worst performance. So according to where they are planted, so it is very important. So if we want to dissipate latent heat, it's much better to have a black poplar rather than ligustus, which is a shrub, or some other trees that are less efficient than a poplar. There's a big difference. If we wanted to improve microclimate, it's very important to choose the right species. Pollution, here too, there are some species that are better performing than others. So we have to understand and ask ourselves which is the role of the trees. For example, this is species from southeast of the United States and Mexico, oak tree, and well, it is very suitable to stand very intense climate events, but also they're very good at reducing pollutants. So you can see the difference between glabrous leaves and tomentous leaves, leaves and glabrous leaves. Obviously, the leaf morphology and also the type of leaf is very important. Here you can see this research carried out in Europe. You can see that species are different also when it comes to intercepting particulate matter. And well, some species are better, for example, lime trees are very good at intercepting particulates. Or if I wanted to plant a lime tree in a very polluted area, it's much better to choose a lime tree with very tomentous leaves. But the question is, do trees always remove particulates? Well, the answer is not always. It depends. So we have to understand, well, the density of the foliage, their positioning, their orientation on the road. Well, so it depends. It depends. According to these factors, they may prevent particulates to go down again on the road. Or, for example, if we have some big foliage, sometimes the big foliage doesn't allow the wind to go around, and therefore they may even cause pollutants to be stuck there. And so it will be even more likely to inhale pollutants or fine dust. So it really depends. The position, the structure of the vegetation are fundamentally important in order to filter air. You see, a barrier might reduce up to 55% of a barrier of trees, might reduce up to 75% of particulates. But obviously, as I said, it depends on the seasonality of the leaves, the density of the foliage. But it is important to reduce the pollutants in the most adequate way. These are some partial results published on international papers. You can see that the ENG that is very vigorous as a tree. You can see that it performs very well, better than some other green shrubs when it comes to reducing copper, lead, nickel, and zinc, while with regard to copper, actually, laurel is much better. And laurel is a spontaneous species here where we live. And then, well, there's something else that will need to be managed in cities in the future, obviously, torrential rain. Well, people say that one tree can intercept up to 3,000 liters of water per year. Obviously, it depends on the foliage, etc. But it is very important to choose the right species because it's not just about the leaves, but also the trunk is very important. So the bark is very important. So, well, there's a big difference between a beech or another tree. For example, between a persimmon tree or a beech, there's a very big difference in terms of ability to intercept water. So with regard to time, you don't have much time left. Sorry. Well, you can see the difference between an elm tree. The elm tree with a full foliage performs better than other trees. If you reduce the leaves, you can see that water storage is decreased, 25% of leaves, obviously no leaves. The elm tree is similar to the other. Well, but anyhow, with the leaves on, an elm tree performs much better than eucalyptus or a plain tree. Well, here you can see a maple tree, for example, performs much better than eucalyptus. We're talking about water storage still. So, all right. So as a way of conclusion, I'd like to say that all the projects to be carried out from now on will have to be part of very well planned strategy. Therefore, taking into account the ecosystem services, it will have to be based, they will have to be based on the economy to create new jobs beneficial to health and well-being. And above all, they will have to be able to adapt to climate change. So having strategic plans means not working in isolated compartments as we've done until now. So we can't just think about every problem separately. We need to have different solutions. Also, for example, the use of trees, green areas in order to intercept more water, for example. So it has to be a collaboration between different sectors, and there are several different objectives we will have to reach, and not all of them are strictly linked to trees. For example, it's also very important to involve the community, the society, and we need to encourage resilience. There are many objectives, and maybe not only these that you are reading at the moment, but anyhow, these are fundamental objectives for the new projects of the future. And also, it's very important to take into account the urban greening factor, which evaluates the quality and the quantity of urban green. So obviously, an intensive urban roof or some grass increase the urban greening factor. That is to say, not only the quantity, but also the quality of the green. This is, by the way, this is a project at Lakeside Drive, and you can see that simply by having green roofs, it is important. It is possible to have a much higher green factor. Or, well, rain garden has a 0.7 urban factor. Urban greening factor. This is all. And from me, I'd like to leave you with a sentence from a book that I published with a friend of mine. And also here you can find more information about the book. I'm sorry I had to go very fast, but well, I had to stick to the timetable. Thank you, Francesco. We're going very quickly. Francesco, please stay with us. At the end of the next speech, there may be some questions for you. So please don't move, stay there. And now the floor to Giovanni Morelli. He is a professor at the Master for Architecture and Landscape at the University of Venice. And I think that by chance, also Stefania Gasperini should be with him. She's vice president of the European Arboriculture Council. And well, she would like to say something to us. Stefania, obviously, well, all the time you will spend for your speech will be subtracted to Giovanni's speech. I'm joking, obviously. Thank you. Thank you. I will be very short. I'd just like to thank the organizers for involving the European Arboriculture Council. Thank you. This is a very, very rare occasion, a very rare event. So I'm really glad to spend a few words about our European organism. And well, the members are national arboriculture associations. So it is an association of associations. At the moment, we have 23 member states. Italy is one of them, of course. And obviously, well, the members are some countries that are already more advanced in terms of arboriculture, for example, Germany and Holland. And then some other countries where still these techniques are quite unknown. Well, our association has the task to harmonize strategies and objectives at European level. In order to do that, our association has created a certification system that is nowadays very well known, especially in our country. It is a voluntary-based certification system that requires to pass an exam. It's a very strict, very serious exam in order to become European tree worker and European tree technician. One is more practical. Well, for example, the European tree technician instead is much more, let's say, managerial. but both of them requires to have a very high level of expertise in the field of arboriculture. These are two expert figures are very well known in our country, in Italy, because we don't have a national certification system. And we see that more and more public bodies are asking to have such professional figures in building sites. Building sites where we need to have trees planted. So they wanted to have these figures working there in order to better and correctly direct all the work. Also, some private clients know these professional figures, and very often for parks and also for some special situations, also private clients require to have the presence of these experts, certified experts. This is all from me. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite you to invite our webpage. We're also very active on Facebook, and now I'm leaving the floor to Giovanni. Thank you. All right, good morning again. So tomorrow, sorry, today, I will try to talk about trees as individuals. First of all, there's something which needs to be said. When we talk about trees, we're talking about biological phenomena. And the first feature that results to be very clear is that, these biological phenomena last a very long time. In 1700, 1800, Mr. Collison gave this definition: 300 years growing, 300 years standing, 300 years decaying, and maybe another 100 years before it disappears forever. So hundreds of years, um, well, it's quite evident, as you can see, or apparent, as you can see. The time of trees is not the time of human beings. This is a beautiful lime tree. And if we compare the tree, with my children and my dog, 7 years in the life of a human being is a lot. But if we go back in time and we look for some other photos of the same tree, we go back to 1990, we have an elderly woman and an elderly man. Where are these two people now? But however, the same tree is still there, and it looks as if nothing has changed for this tree, um, despite the years passing by. And so the trees also have some spaces devoted to them. You know, a tree can live up to 1,000 years. It means spending their life always in the same place. It means being witnesses, taking part in the life of many human beings, their feelings, their daily life and actions. So these are trees that contain inside themselves many different lives, and they are not just a biological phenomenon then. These are trees that talk to us in different ways, according to their different attitude. What I mean to say is that the tree, just like this beautiful tree planted in Villa Verrucchia, and they say that even Saint Francis planted it, Saint Francis himself. So trees become something that talks to each one of them in a different way. And or then we have, for example, this other tree that you can see on the image. A tree keeps on talking to people. This is um, an elm tree that died in 1930s in Marche region, but it is still deeply remembered by people. So trees survive even when they are not there anymore. What does it mean to live the life of many different individuals. So it means having this transgenerational ability. And then there's also an identification mechanism with trees. So this is a tree, a cedar that fell in Ferrara in 2010. And this tree was donated to science in order to do some studies with it. So if we read the rings of the tree, I'm not going to explain this graph, but anyhow, it's just to show you that apart from all the interactions between the trees and human beings, well, we can um, well, connect the rings, each one of the rings, to some events in human history. For example, I went to look for the ring related to the history of Italy and the First World War, and even myself, my date of birth. And therefore, I am part of the rings of the tree. And then we can even try to go further into this research. And you can see that I reconstructed my family tree through this tree. So I went back to I looked for the ring related to the date of birth of my grandfather, my father, and even my children. So you can see a global history, individual history overlapping, and this leads us to identify ourselves with the tree itself. And therefore, this means that feelings are born for the tree. And these are photos of this tree that, as you can see, it fell down. And these are some Facebook posts showing that everybody was suffering for the tree. And then there's even something more, there's something else. The monumental tree becomes present, is present in human beings' daily life. So, um, for example, talking about stone pines, or domestic or stone pines, since we're here in Cervia, um, it seems quite appropriate. Here you can see the pictorial representation of a pine, and this fresco was on a Roman house, in a Roman house. It was inside the house as if it was part of the family, a family member. You can see that trees were shown as a part of the family itself. And then we have trees that become part of daily life. So the set of the daily life. This is a Botticelli's work of art showing a novel by Boccaccio set in the pine wood of Ravenna. And or then you can also see this other map by an anonymous author that shows the pine wood of Ravenna. So the trees become a part of people's daily life, and therefore the trees are part of our actions and daily life, as I said. For example, another photo, we have these domestic pines. This photo from the beginning of the 20th century. This is a parade at Fori Imperiali in Rome. You can see these soldiers marching and the young pine trees planted along the roadside. So the trees are part of these political actions. And you know that the fascist regime planted many trees. So trees as part of the political ideology. And And then we have trees as part of our social life. Pine trees, for example, become part of the idea of a holiday at the sea. So this is Riccione Viale Ceccarini, where still nowadays there are plenty of tourists. It is a seaside resort. And let's also remember, of course, that trees are a biological phenomenon, regardless of the social value that we attach to it. So trees are a place for richness, biodiversity. And as Professor Ferini told us already, the tree introduces the element of naturality inside the urban context. And therefore, the urban context um, is enriched by the presence of trees. So the tree as a place, it becomes an ecosystem. And here, I am here on this picture, this is me, um, on an oak tree in Sweden. So understanding the value of a tree means, of course, coexisting, living together with with the tree and with its wood. So it is a matter of educating people to living together with trees. Recently, some new methods for arboriculture management have been devised, and they are focused on the tree itself, its ecological value, its biological value. So conservative and palliative arboriculture, which have the objective to preserve these trees as a habitat in order to, at the same time, also safeguard the safety of the people that coexist with the trees. We need to have professionals, of course, who manage these trees. We heard about the European Agriculture Council, and as you can see, they certify, they train these professionals. It means being professional, but also having an ethical attitude towards the trees, respecting the trees as individuals, regardless of the advantages deriving from the tree to human beings. So trees really as the protagonists of an ethical behavior, a new attitude that is based on the awareness of the monumental value of trees. But not just, it's not just about the aesthetics of the tree, not just the age of the tree. The trees are part of a cultural relationship. And here you can see my personal interpretation of a tree being a monument. This is a survival. This is a tree is the witness of generations of human beings that planted it, took care of it, and also benefited from or well got benefits from it. So this tree is a monument. This is a monumental tree, and it becomes like a mirror. It is individual memory, but also collective memory. And of course, we have to base our future relationship with trees on all these aspects. Professor Ferini explained very well the advantages of trees. But well, first of all, we have to recognize the rights of the trees, the right to being autochthonous, a right to time and space, a suitable time and space, a right to self-determination of the shape, right to subtractive growth, the right to recycle themselves, and also the right to complete their vital cycle, their right to dignity of the end of life, and also the right to narration. Of narration, that is to say, the right of trees to tell us stories, and we have to look at trees with the soul. And if we are able to guarantee these rights, we will also get benefits from the trees, also ecological, also environmental trees coming from the trees. And this is all. I have the right to tell you your time is over. All right. Okay. So this is the very last slide. I would just like to go back to the event that took place in July 2019 that damaged us so much. And I was deeply affected from the event. We can have a good future only if we manage to uh, well, to work from the bottom to the top. That is to say, we need to have the society understanding the importance of regeneration, reconstruction of the trees, of vegetation, urban forest also. Only if the society, the community understands the value of trees, we will manage to have the right coexistence with trees in the future. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Well, these are examples that you are always able to underline and reinterpret and, well, giving us a different point of view in terms of the identity of trees. So I think we should now go on very quickly because we need to stick with the times. And I would like to ask Novella Cappelletti, director of Paesage magazine, if she is already with us. She is expected to talk about a very important topic. It is very important for us who have to manage the urban forests and the relationships with our customers. The customers of local authorities are the citizens. And also communicating the good nature of our works, which are not always perceived in this way by citizens. So she's going to talk about the architecture, landscape architecture, and the communication, which is fundamental in this moment, in this very moment, when we are trying to not only implement our urban forests, but we also need, on the basis of correct principles, renew our trees. So, Novella, remember to stick with the time. I will tell you when the time is almost over, and I ask you to stay with us to answer any possible questions at the end of these three interventions, of these three speeches. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to immediately share my screen. Well, it's very difficult to do it in such a short time. I wanted to share with you a broader analysis, but I will only touch upon a few topics which are at the basis of our work. First, I would like to start from this. So communicating or informing, this is something that we have to struggle with every day. The main difference between communicating and informing, the difference is great, is crucial, because to communicate, we need to give a meaning to what we tell, and to inform, we need to give the chance to those who are reading to understand the structure and the tools needed for that reality to be fully understood. So this is a very important task that we have, because it is at the basis of how we can tell and communicate what comes from reality. I'd like to share with you a quick overview of some of the main topics that we are talking about, the main themes at the national and international level. Well, first, the topic of climate change and urban resilience, with some projects, some crucial projects. I chose some among others. The first one is Milano Forestami. It is a very interesting project because on one hand, they chose a slogan, Forestami. It's like saying, forest me. And the aim is to plant 3 million trees by 2030. It doesn't mean that there will be trees in the uh, Piazza del Duomo in Milan, but it means that all the new trees that will be planted will be included in different projects around the city, but they are also part of much wider projects. So to sum up a little bit how communication can be effective and give you an example. Another important project is Prato Urban Jungle. Urban jungle is a very powerful expression, and it attracted the attention of the press. It is based on an urban plan, including several interventions that the city has set for different situations. So not just targets in terms of numbers and communications, but also with this operational, tangible tool, which works according to very easy and simple schemes that can be read not only by technicians, but also by those who are not experts. Another project is the urban forest of Barcelona. The idea at the basis is the same. Even Barcelona has been launching this plan by focusing on 5 main goals in order to be perceived clearly by its citizens. And finally, the strategic plan of Nantes. This plan is an example that I wanted to share with you, not really in terms of communication, despite being very interesting, but in terms of operational procedures, because the French cities follow what they call director plan. It is attributed to a landscape architect that works hand in hand with real estate developers that will work on that areas. And the architect coordinates all the actions for 8 years and define the guidelines. These 8 years can also be renewed and become 16. The strategic plan of Nantes was started by Alexandre Chementov and now is managed by Jacqueline Osti. The guidelines at the basis of the city development are managed within a landscape plan, which protects and coordinates the landscape development in a prioritarian way. So it sets ease as a priority compared to real estate, for example, which is included in this wider, broader landscape plan. Then there are other interesting themes and topics. For example, adaptation strategies. COVID required us to focus on several problems within the cities. This is an example. I cannot show it to you too much in details, but this was an area, marsh, and it was close to the city. There were problems also connected to rainfalls, but there were also problems in terms of building and real estate because they wanted to build in this area. But they found some solutions like NBS, so wet land, which is reclaimed, and the creation of an urban park. Here is another adaptation strategy. This slide is taken from a recent research of the Lend Society. That's the name of the agency. Uh, it sums up, I was talking about communication, the main topics. So, working with nature is the title, and the street is the core. And why the streets? Because COVID made us aware of the importance of streets. Streets, for those who live in the city, are the first place where they can go to breathe some air, the first place in which public life becomes private, and in which people have a relationship with the landscape. So street becomes fundamental. So this adaptive design shows us what might be in the future. So the importance of biodiversity, slow mobility, and the main lane divided by rain gardens with better water management and absorption, the zebra crossings, and again, slower mobilities, public spaces that are integrated in the street itself, the trees with whatever the trees can offer in terms of urban comfort. And I am not going to dwell too much upon this because the previous speakers have already underlined it. They contribute to improving the urban comfort and also the digital landscape. We can have all the cultural and technical information, and this is something extremely powerful. And this approach is connected to the approach of smart city, but I don't like that idea too much because we understood that data and figures are not enough. They just give us numbers, but this doesn't solve any problem because knowledge alone is not enough. Another important theme in terms of adaptation strategies is this work carried out by an Italian group, a group of Italians in America, in the United States. They have been working in several cities and in Milan as well. And they are instant projects, very quick projects that are carried out in 3-4 days, 1 week. So they make the street a more livable space, not only for cars, but also for pedestrians, for cyclists. And this is carried out only by working on graphics. So they close some area, they prevent traffic from entering, and you see also the drawings showing the transformation in specific roads, roads for the schools, road for open air restoration and eating out, areas for sort of playgrounds. This is carried out very rapidly and is at the basis of this adaptive strategy. Here is another example of a street. The street becomes a playground when it is not used as a road. And again, I want to underline the very short time needed to make this kind of things. It was created in 3 days. This is in Milan. You see these urban areas, these parks are temporary at the beginning, but then they will become permanent. You see that the trees are still very small and in pots, in vases. And so they are at the basis of a process that becomes permanent. Novella, I need to remind you that the time is almost over. I'm about to conclude. Then some example of tactical urbanism, then the proxemics that makes us reflect on the parameters that have always been very clear at an urban level, especially now with urban distancing, we need to take into consideration all of this. Very quickly on slow mobility, which is extremely trendy, let's say, at the moment. You see these projects in Copenhagen with this silo underground car park and bicycles. A very last example of Venice and of another trend, school and landscape. So the importance of open space in schools. You see that the city of Venice has just completed 70 gardens for primary schools to enhance the outdoor learning. This is another school in Nantes. It gives you an idea of this landscape school. Very quickly for another example of university. And finally, this project that maybe you already know and that is extremely recognizable for you. Well, it's for Rimini and the regeneration of the coastal part of the area on the sea, which is somehow going back to its natural state with the reintroduction of dunes. And a very final remark. We talk about trees. This is our tree code. In the last 2 years, we have been talking about 221,000 trees. And apart from telling things, we also make tangible actions. We have created this tree with floor art. We gave 300 trees to this school to make a wood, a forest to benefit from open air and open spaces. And this is all for me. Thank you. Thank you for listening. So before moving to Mrs. Priolo, the local councillor, the regional councillor, if there are any questions that you want to ask, we can ask these questions and let the speakers answer. Are there any questions? Yes, there is a question from Daniele Zappi, Municipality of Lopparo. The planning of ecosystemic services requires human and economic resources and a culture that is difficult to achieve in small municipalities. The cities and the towns can be different. Also in terms of adaptation to climate change, would it be necessary, in your opinion, to think in a more, let's say, on a more smaller scale for smaller cities? Well, I think that the example we gave can be replicated because it can be replicated and improved. I would suggest you to have a wider perspective and think not only in terms of municipalities, but in terms of union of municipalities. This is something that has been carried out in Emilia-Romagna for some years because thinking only on a small scale, in my opinion, is not effective. There are no more questions from our listeners, but Flavia Mazzoni, myself, would like to ask a question to my friend and colleague, to Giovanni Morelli. It's both a technical and ethical question. The tree is a silent presence, but how can we, technicians and citizens, guarantee that trees have a long and good life? This is my question. Well, it's not an easy question. It is clear that we need to be far-sighted. We need to look at the future, have a future perspective, and find new strategies for, let's say, living together in the urban areas. The city must be designed to be suitable, let's say, for trees and ensure the life of trees in the future. We cannot, um, let's say, separate the tree heritage from whatever is in the city, and the tree must be sometimes replaced by projects for including new individuals in a protected way, but also um, focusing on some interventions that can guarantee the mitigation of negative, let's say, interventions on the trees. And I think of parks and urban forests that are already protected. But we need to, let's say, go away, run away from the idea of immediacy, because we need to have a cultural shift, a cultural change, allowing us to understand that what we do with trees now will have consequences and repercussions in the future, in 20, 30, or 40 years. Those who pay for what happens are not those who damage trees, but those who will live in the future. We need to be aware of this, but we also need to be aware of the cultural shifts that we need, the new awareness. So schools should play a major role in this, and education in general. And also the preschool and primary schools are at the basis of our involvement to create um, the guardians of tomorrow, the guardians of trees of tomorrow. And this is the only way to protect the trees we plant today and that will be grown up, so to say, in 100 or 150 years. Thank you. Also, Margareta Braille would like to say something about it, and then I would like to ask a final question to Professor Ferrini. But again, remember to be as short as you can. I know you will hate me for this.
Margareta.
Well, I didn't want to answer this question, but the previous one and the action of small municipalities. As Daniele has already said, the municipalities collaborating in other debt are small municipalities. But we noticed that maybe one of the things that made the difference is the collaboration with consultants, so experts. So from an academic point of view, well, scholars, universities supporting small and medium municipalities, well, should be enabled to understand, should be enabled to help in an effective way the municipalities that should understand what they can benefit from. However, this is one of the things that I'm really thinking about at the moment. What could make the difference between big cities, large cities, and small towns? Even in small towns and municipalities, the competence, the expertise is great, but it's difficult to, let's say, benefit from external consultants, external knowledge, external research. Maybe doesn't happen in Cervia, but in other municipalities. I'm sorry, Margarita, at the beginning I didn't understand what question you wanted to talk about. Mr. Ferrini, so sometimes we ignored the idea of renewal. I know you have been a supporter of this idea, and I think that it is extremely topical because it is connected to climate change and well, not just for a new awareness, but also for the new needs. The renewal of trees should be an integral part, a fundamental part of the approach that we have in cities. We cannot hear you. Okay, now we can hear you. Yes, for sure. We need to keep on thinking that renewal is one of the management techniques that can guarantee urban forests to the future generations. It is clear that this doesn't mean to go there and knock down trees. This should be part of a short, medium, and long-term planning. For sure, there are some risks in some areas, but this should be included in more long-term plans. We also need to understand that some trees are not suitable anymore. They cannot face the future. And so we need to be able to foresee, or maybe we had to do it 20 years ago, we need to change them. I think that 3 to 5% of trees give problems. So it's quite a small percentage that we should work on every year. And I think that this is the right way to follow in order to have in 2030, maybe 100 years, as Giovanni Morelli was saying, the right way to have good and protected trees. We are perfectly on time, and I'm quite surprised. I would like to ask if Irene Priolo, the Regional Councillor for the Environment of the Emilia-Romagna region, is connected. So I would like to give the floor to her. I know she is on an electrical car. Yes, it is true. It's an electrical car, a hybrid car. I would like to leave the floor to you for an intervention, for your presentation, and then ask you a couple of questions about your recent institutional role. The floor is yours. Would you like to ask me questions before or later? Well, maybe for those who do not live in Emilia-Romagna, they do not know that the president, Stefano Bonaccini, has launched a very important initiative. So planting 1 tree per inhabitant of our region. So 4.5 million of trees to be planted. This intervention was financed, and I don't need to ask you why, because this is easy to understand. But a more specific question: what kind of ecosystemic value can we attach to this initiative, to this very important initiative? As Novella was saying earlier, this goes hand in hand with other similar initiatives that are being carried out in Italy. So what was your idea at the basis of it? And then another question: what could be the results of such an initiative in terms of health? For our region, I cannot ignore the pandemic, the COVID-19, and its spreading. So these 2 points, these 2 things, well, raise my curiosity. So the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, good morning to all of you. It was a pleasure for me to listen to the previous speakers. And well, you know, what the region is trying to do at the moment, we are trying to speed up these processes, this vision, and also the ability to have a close link between the public administration, but also between the citizens and the private sector. So I would like to say that, in my opinion, the ecosystem aspects are strictly related to health. Obviously, the project for 4.5 million trees, obviously, is a very important one in order to improve the quality of the air. We know that here in this area, in this Po River flat Po River Plain, we know that we have air pollution problems. So by planting 4.5 million trees, once they have grown, once they have been maintained, for sure those trees will have a very important impact on the CO2. And estimates say that we will have well, 44 million tons of CO2 less. So this is something very important. And this is the most immediate consequence. But with such an intervention related to urban reforestation, and our project aims at involving not just the citizens, but also those public administrations that already have some very important projects going on. For example, the municipality of Cervia, who's holding this conference today. But as I was saying, we don't just want to do something for the environment, but we also want to work in order to make the landscape even more beautiful. We want to have an impact on the quality of life of our citizens in general. Therefore, the project will work in order to have urban reforestation. Clearly, this is extremely important in order to reduce those heat bubbles that we have in our cities. But at the same time, we want to upgrade, re-qualify, regenerate the environment. And I'm referring, for example, the Vento infrastructure. It's the biking path from Venice to Turin. And it is a very important infrastructure along the Po River. It improves the quality of the landscape, but also the accessibility of the territory. We think that the accessibility of the territory is one of the main objectives for for our projects. So, of course, we have to work in order to focus on the identity of the landscape. We have to work for our rivers. Emilia-Romagna region has rivers, and we have to promote the landscape of those rivers. So these are just examples, obviously. But well, our project will have a duration of 5 years. And so it won't be just about beautifying the landscape, but the citizens also have to be to feel part of these projects. The other question was about the project. What is the multiplying effect of the project? Well, first of all, as we said, Emilia-Romagna region is allocating resources. So it is a project that is not being carried out just to reach a consensus from the population, but the region is given the possibility to private citizens, but also companies to be part of the project. Recently, I had a meeting with Assoflora, and we know that the sector at the moment is having problems. So this is a project that will give us the chance to create work for private companies too. It is a project with environmental value, but at the same time also value from the employment point of view. Now, I took part in conference with Professor Pileri, for example. We are working with him on a Vento biking path. So for every kilometer, we create 5 new jobs. Therefore, again, I repeat it, it's not just a project for making the landscape more beautiful, but this project will have a multiplying effect in terms of creating new jobs, improving the quality of life, so many benefits. This year, we have allocated 1.6 million euros, but Emilia-Romagna region will allocate 3.5 million euros for the next 3 years. And by doing that, we will make sure that municipalities will have trees, new trees. We will also help them plant the trees according to guidelines, to some very specific unified guidelines. um, as you have already explained in the previous speeches. So I'm just saying that Emilia-Romagna region is confident, believes in it, and for those municipalities that don't have enough resources, the region is here to help them. So we will for sure help them, help the local authorities along this process. With our regional government, we are also trying well, to join this project with the recovery funds. I think that between now and 2026, this is one of the projects that will certainly be implemented. You know that the recovery funds have some very specific requirements, but I'm sure that this is a very tangible project that will be deeply enjoyed by the future generations, and we're working in order to submit very harmonious, uniform projects. And well, you know, reforestation at the moment is considered as a key aspect. What I'd like to say, what I'm trying to say is that reforestation is an emerging culture at the moment. Our ambition is that every citizen of Emilia-Romagna will have his or her own tree. Citizens will also have the chance to take part in the project if they want. So for sure, from the ecosystem point of view, if it's just one tree planted in a private garden, will maybe it will not have such a huge environmental impact, but it will make sure that citizens feel as part of a whole community. So collaboration, stricter collaboration between the public administration, private companies. For example, I will go to Novellara to talk to the waste management company there. It's a private company, and they're also participating in this project. So, of course, we know that over the years there have been so many projects have been carried out. And Roberto, we have also worked together in some other sectors. And well, also, well, the public administration has conceived many projects which have not been turned into reality, but now it is time to do something practical, something tangible. This project will certainly be implemented, and well, we will have many new trees. This is something very strong with a huge impact. And Roberto, you know that we're also working on guidelines, as I was saying, because we want to make sure that all these trees will be planted based on a standard, based on some very specific criteria, very well studied guidelines. We want to be sure that after a few years, we still have all those trees. We don't want to make mistakes in terms of maintenance. We know that maintenance will be one of the main challenges, but we want to support municipalities. We want to make sure that the right irrigation systems are chosen. And this is why we're working on the guidelines. They're very important in terms of resilience for this project. Well, this is all, Roberto, and I know that in the afternoon you are going to have another session, so the afternoon session, and please, Roberto, if you can, if I could have the presentations of your conference, I think that it could be very useful for our regional activities. Thank you. All right, thank you. Thanks for your answers. Of course, I can pass the speeches to you. Well, I'm just the chairman, actually, so I had to ask your question to the organizers, and they said that yes, you can have all the presentations. And also, well, thank you. You are showing to be a very good technician. You're talking about irrigation systems. You are becoming an expert. It's your fault. You have taught everything to me. Well, jokes apart, well, I'm happy that I only asked you two questions because I mean, your answers have been very detailed. And well, I'm joking. Obviously, we're very good friends. So thank you again. This is a beautiful project, and well, you know, we also have the climate decree, Article 4, that will give some funds for reforestation of urban settings. So, well, before leaving you, I'd only like to say that, well, I agree with all the things you said, and well, as you said, we are sort of trying to go back in time, thousands of years ago, when our Po River plain was totally different from now. So we'd like to go back to the pre-Roman time. And as you said, if we really managed to implement this project, reaching the objectives of the region, so joining forces between the regional authorities and also the local authorities, really, I think that our offspring, well, obviously, as long as the human beings don't disappear from the planet before that. But anyhow, I know I'm not an optimist, but anyhow, if we do this, we will manage to totally change the look of this planet. And we will manage to have a total reforestation of this area. Thank you, Irene. Thanks for being here with us. I know that you're always very busy. Yes. Well, so, you know, well, thanks to digital technologies, we are working much more than before. In the past, we used to have just one conference a day. Now we have 4 conferences a day. Thank you for being with us again. And well, thanks on behalf of the municipality of Cervia. And we will send you all the speeches, we'll send you all the documents, all the materials. I hope it's going to be useful. I hope it's useful for your next projects and your next activities. Thank you, Irene. I'm going to to Bologna. Thank you. Right, so this is all for this morning. And I must say, personally, I'm very satisfied. I think I've learned lots of things this morning. So thank you for your attendance. They're telling me that we have many listeners and many attendees, so many viewers. So we will start again at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. And I guarantee that this afternoon session will be as interesting as the morning. So thank you. Enjoy lunch. Get some coffee before coming back. See you later.